Hello, I'm BC Dallas, here to read you the first chapter in my upcoming novel, Breakfall. Breakfall is an epic fantasy featuring a slow burn queer romance. It is the first in my planned Anamimers trilogy, which if we have any Guelga speakers down in the comments, please let me know if I pronounced that wrong. But the trilogy follows the adventures of Laurelyn and Anne as they face down kings, gods, and themselves on their journey to save each other. So without further ado, here's Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Laurelyn. The sweet smoke of Anne's hearth danced on the wind, confirming she was in. Nestled into the forest, her home peeked out between the surrounding trees as I rounded the final bend. She'd coaxed willows to form a little cottage with magic, their trailing leaves lending the structure a sad beauty. I wasn't surprised when she appeared in the doorway moments after I stepped into view. Anne didn't smile when she saw me, but her eyes softened. "Hello, Laurelyn." Her voice drifted on the morning breeze like a tattered fog, fading in the growing light. It'd been 3 days since I last saw her, well past time for a visit. "Morning, Anne. I brought cookies to share." She nodded and turned back to her cottage, all the invitation she was ever likely to give. Outside the promise of blood or a magical problem to solve, very few things excited Anne. When a fae with truly dark intent came to our forest to torture me and feed on my pain, she ripped him to shreds. Literally. The image of her soaked in blood the same shade as her hair would remain with me forever. Not that she'd always been so protective. On first appearing in the woods, almost a year after my own arrival, Anne offered me a gift. Immediately following my acceptance, she struck with magic to bind me in servitude as payment for the perceived debt. Fortunately, my still inexplicable immunity to fae magic prevented the binding from taking hold, not that she'd noticed its failure. At the time I'd been so lonely, I was just happy to enjoy the presence of another vaguely humanoid person, even if they did occasionally give me chores. She never asked for anything crazy, seeming to crave company, though she rarely bothered talking. To her eventual chagrin, she was slow to notice my immunity. I followed Anne inside the warm cottage and found her already seated on what I fondly referred to as her throne. A massive, high-backed chair grown from the same willows as her cottage, she'd lined it with furs from the beasts she killed to claim the land on first arriving. I never came out this far before Anne, too frightened by stories the other fae told of the creature. She'd tried to describe it to me before, and best I could figure it looked vaguely like a cross between a minotaur and a seal. Either way, the hide was incredibly soft. As the only high fae in the area, and the only one I'd ever met, Anne was indisputably the strongest. Fae came in an incredible variety of forms and strengths, few of them appearing human, but the high fae were different. They possessed greater magical ability and ruled over all the other lesser fae, as Anne referred to them, in their realm of Valahine. Anne could have passed for human if not for the overwhelming presence and unearthly beauty. Since she also possessed a melancholy streak a mile wide and a hairpin trigger when provoked, the rest of the fae tended to avoid her. Even with me, she remained deeply succinct except on the rare occasions when her curiosity or anger were piqued. I filled the silence with chatter and took her continued tolerance of my presence as a sign it didn't bother her. Setting my basket on the table, I tossed the black cloak I'd worn to stave off the autumn chill over the smaller but still comfortable chair Anne made for me. She received no other visitors as far as I knew. A pot of tea sat gently steaming on the table. She always knew when to have the tea ready. Pulling the cookies from the basket, I arranged them next to the pot. "They're chocolate chip today. How have you been since I saw you?" She picked up a cookie and took a slow bite. I turned and fussed with my cloak before I sat. No outward appreciation showed, but Anne always ate whatever I brought. "I'm much the same as I always am. There are whispers of trouble further north of here that may offer some amusement, but I have little hope." Morose, as usual, but not so bad I felt the need to offer myself up for one of her experiments. That was a sure way to cheer her, and equally as sure to cause me discomfort. Once she'd accepted an enchanted necklace from me and finally realized that not only was I free from her spell, but by her own laws she owed me a debt, she'd been fascinated by my immunity. Well, first she went into a blind fury over my supposed manipulation, But after I hurriedly clarified I had no intention of extorting anything out of her, she was fascinated. She wanted to understand my immunity and enjoyed experimenting with its limits. Prior to Anne, I'd assumed my immunity was complete, but she found a few loopholes. Her experimentation left me in precarious positions more than once, as she still didn't fully appreciate how delicate my human body was compared to hers. In return for those mild aggravations, I took great pleasure in insisting she couldn't pay me back for the present. She argued that it wasn't up to me, and it was unbecoming of a high fae to be indebted to a human for so long. I repeated that I meant the magic necklace as a gift freely given, and she couldn't make me accept a favor. She, in turn, insisted it was not magic, as you humans mistakenly called it, but Thray. It was magic. Despite it all, I allowed the experiments to brighten her mood, and because I wanted answers. I had no explanations for my abilities beyond suspecting my grandmother was like me from a few comments my mom made over the years. If she had known what we were, she left no hints behind. Trouble I should be concerned about? As much as the others feared Anne, they also depended on her for protection. Any fae that threatened her territory were dealt with, painfully. The rest she left alone so long as they didn't bother her. Unlikely. It would seem a fae with some power has been playing with the mortals and making a mess. They must be a fool to act so openly. The humans are starting to notice. And why wouldn't they when the idiot is leaving bodies torn limb from limb out in the open? I mean, the energy harvested from such a death can be exquisite, but clean up after yourself for Danon's sake. Those sorts of deaths were sure to have been reported on the news. My cabin didn't have Wi-Fi or cable, so I tended not to hear about things until after the fact, but it seemed pretty major to miss. You don't think they'll bother us, though, right? I asked, a little concerned by the idea of something that tore humans limb from limb in the same vicinity as me. Anne looked up from her second cookie and smiled softly. We're still bound, you and I. If the idiot comes this way, I will give them a lesson in how one extracts the most exquisite agony without letting a drop of blood reach the ground. Okay, terrifying, but also comforting. Some days I felt the only thing between us was the debt I refused to acknowledge and she refused to forget. When she spoke like that, though, I started to believe she might genuinely care for me. Warm happiness spread through my chest, but I didn't give voice to the feelings her offer of violent protection provoked. That's good, then. I was thinking of trying to catch some trout for dinner. Would you like to join me by the river after we're done with the tea? She nodded and picked up a third cookie. Yes, after the tea. We sat in silence, her eating all the cookies, me slowly drinking the tea. The sweet aroma and warmth of her fire cocooned me, her little cottage so comfortable I found myself drifting off. I floated on the edge of sleep until Anne's whisper abruptly woke me. Wake, Laurelyn! I opened my eyes to find her crouched by my chair, worry in every line of her face. I jolted upright. I'd watched Anne face threats before, but never witnessed the worry bordering on fear present then. She held her fingers to my lips and leaned closer. Someone is approaching. You must leave now. Run home and do not stop for anything. Your cabin is warded. Do not leave it until I come for you. Questions shone through my eyes, but she shook her head. There's no time to explain. I will intercept them, but they must not see you. I nodded, and she pulled me to my feet, hurrying me out the door. Go, Laurelyn. I will find you as soon as I can. I took off running for home, heart pounding. It was 3 miles of narrow trail back, a distance I usually walked in about an hour. Fortunately, the way was familiar, so I ran with abandon, bursting through leaves and overhanging branches without pause. Before long, the river's song echoed from ahead. Pausing on the bank, I watched the water flow, still running high from all the recent rain. Rather than following its edge for nearly a mile to reach the crossing, I took a steadying breath and plunged into the icy flow. I stumbled out the other side breathless, soaked from the waist down, and grateful for the grippy tread of my boots that kept me from fully following in. Shaking, I stopped just long enough to empty the waterlogged rubber boots before charging into the woods, guided only by my knowledge of the area. Without a trail, bramble and branches grew thick enough I slowed to a flailing march as I forced my way through. Most of the surrounding land was part of the estate I inherited, and I'd left it untouched. Humanity's rapid expansion had unknowingly driven the fae hidden among us further into the few remaining pieces of wilderness, and space was starting to come at a premium. Determined to safeguard our little corner of the world into the future, I'd spoken with the lawyer who managed the original estate and arranged for it to be placed in a trust in the event of my death to maintain the land and register it as a protected nature preserve. Breath sawing in and out, I really hoped she wouldn't be filing that paperwork anytime soon. Pushing through thick bushes, cursing as they tore at my skin, and fervently hoping my off-trail shortcut wasn't going to end with me hypothermic and lost in the woods as something monstrous enough to scare Anne chased me, I spared a moment's worry for the other Fae living nearby. They depended on the forest, either incapable or unwilling to return to the Fae realm. Many were exiled, typically for petty offenses that boiled down to pissing off the wrong member of the nobility. Others stayed because something about the human world appealed to them. I knew Anne was exiled, but she refused to talk about it. I did my best to respect her privacy. I still didn't know her real name. I'd pestered her about it for weeks, but all my efforts proved pointless. I was the one who decided to call her Anne, owing to her bright red hair and my childhood obsession with Ella Montgomery. Even with her volatile, taciturn nature, I found myself irresistibly drawn to her and the ease with which her presence soothed my lonely heart. Despite my best efforts, my other Fae neighbors always maintained a distance. Sure, they'd happily discuss the goings-on of the forest, occasionally exchange little favors, but the connection remained firmly surface level. Other humans seemed to smell the strangeness on me, distancing themselves as if they feared catching it, but among the Fae I was still somehow too human for them. Not Anne, though. I caught sight of my cabin through the trees with great relief. Stumbling free from the woods, I hurried up the porch and through the unlocked door. Gratitude for my home surged despite the circumstances, as it always did when I crossed the threshold. Heart still racing, I locked the door behind me before hurrying for dry clothes and the comfort of my little bedroom. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little taste, and if you'd like more, follow the link down below to get your very own copy of Breakfall. If you want another video of me reading chapter 2, please let me know in the comments. I'll see what I can put together for you all. Again, I thank you so much for your support of this project. This is the culmination of years of work, and I can't tell you how much it means to me to be sharing this with all of you. So thank you again for your support, and happy reading, everybody.